What's up, guys? Welcome to Two Americas. I'm really excited about this episode. I am Zinga.
And I'm Scott.
Um, well, clap, you stupid bastards.
Yeah.
Get it? Joe Biden.
I thought you were making a joke, and then I didn't realize you were making a joke about him.
That was the joke.
According to the media, that never happened.
What?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like they made an official report debunking it. They just memory hold it like everything else.
Right. Well, it did happen. Well, obviously, today we're going to be talking about Joe Biden. We're going to be talking about Trump. Obviously, the debate, because it is serious business, and there's a lot to discuss.
Yeah. Trump getting COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Melania testing positive.
Well. Yep. Man, let me tell you, 2020 is like that dookie pie that lady had in The Help.
Okay, I haven't seen the movie, but this sounds fantastic. Please
she
do tell.
She literally used her. she got fired. It was like you know the backstory of The Help.
I do.
Most part. Okay, yeah. So she gets fired. The black lady that was the maid or the nanny or whatever she was, and then she's like, I want to apologize. So she makes her a pie, but she literally puts her dookie in it. So Dark. Then the lady's sitting there eating the pie.
And she's just probably smiling.
She's eating it. She's like,
is it
this
good?
Is good, Mabel.
Yeah, 2020 is like a bingo card.
It is.
I mean, I'm not shocked by anything. Rick Moranis got hit with the knockout game. I mean, the person who hit him, didn't say it was a knockout game. It just was. It was right. just a big black fellow with a black hoodie just walked up on 67-year-old Honey, I Shrunk the Kids guy and just laid him out.
Well, you know what he's guilty of. He's guilty of walking while white.
That's a serious crime, people, and you need to respect the law.
It's similar to driving while black.
Mm-hmm.
So, white privilege isn't always the case.
That's fair.
Right.
Is there like an equivalent thing for like Asians or Hispanics?
Well, I just know Asians can't drink, so that in and of itself sucks.
Or drive.
They can count. Let me tell you.
They're really good at that. Although my friend, she's terrible at math. Oddly enough.
She's got some Caucasian in there somewhere.
Must be. Yeah. Must be mixed somewhere in the distant past. So, a couple of things that we really wanted to discuss seriously today was, I put out this video.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't get a lot of reactions, but it's been getting a fair amount of views. And the thing is it wasn't getting reactions not just because people weren't watching it. That would be the easy answer.
Right.
The fact is that a lot of people were trying to hit me up behind the scenes. Because I posed a question. I basically said, centrists, moderates, independents, undeclareds, what was your opinion about the debates, and did it move the needle left or right for you in any way towards Biden or Trump?
Mm-hmm.
And, I just figured I'd get like a couple of responses, and that would be that.
Right.
But I ended up engaging in like 15
really
long form 15 like long
but not
form
on the
discussions.
Post itself.
Not on the post itself. There was a couple, but most of it was like either messaged to me privately or like DM'd in some way or texted, because none of these people wanted to out themselves. Which, I mean, doesn't that say a lot about our political discourse right there?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing: these weren't all like hardcore conservatives like us.
Right.
The lion's share of these DMs were from people who were much more left leaning, but they were afraid to point out their point of view lest their friends, their family, or like other opposing types were going to hurl insults at them or out them in some way.
They pretty much stayed in the closet.
Yeah, but I guess there was something about the tone I set, because everybody said the same thing in, when they replied to me, which was, I really appreciate you asking that question, that you were open to my point of view, and that they felt like as people who were in the middle, they were being like there was this tug of war game going on where there's a bunch of loonies on both sides trying to yank them towards their particular perspective or their presidential candidate. And they're in the middle just being like, can I just be reasonable, please? And like trying to pull their arms in. And so I guess something about my video just kind of made them feel like they were comfortable being honest, but not comfortable enough to do it publicly. And so this, I think, is one of the main things I wanted to talk about tonight, which was, as people who find themselves in the political middle, or what some people might call like politically homeless, like Bridget Fedesi, it's one of her kind of consistent gripes, where you want a certain level of defense for your country, a certain amount of military spending. You want a certain amount of social welfare programs. You want a certain amount of regulations, but not a ton. Taxes, etc. It's all very reasonable, classical liberal stuff. The stuff that we used to just associate with being liberal. These people now feel like they're politically homeless because they feel like they have to choose between one of two extremes. And those extremes being, it's like for instance, abortion's a big one.
Right.
A lot of these people brought up abortion where they're saying, I don't like how the left is out there treating it like some kind of religious sacrifice or sacrament, you know, where they're like screaming at the top of their lungs that I got a corner office in a Tesla because I, you know, murdered a baby.
Right.
They're like, that's kind of gauche and creepy. They're like, on the other hand, we don't want the evangelical position where it's like, you know, we have to bear children like the Handmaid's Tale. And, you know, and regardless of what my thoughts were on this, they didn't like either position, right? And so they were trying to find some kind of a compromise. And these particular individuals that addressed me didn't feel like there was any compromise in the near future, that they were just going to be tugged into one extreme or the other. So there's a kind of ambivalence and a kind of ennui and nihilism associated with their voting patterns, because some of them were saying that they actually did get tipped towards Trump, but it wasn't for the reasons you might suspect. Like it wasn't because they got red pilled. It was just because they looked at Biden and they thought that guy's a mechanical doofus who literally is just being controlled by elitists.
Was it the debate that made them change their mind?
Yes, yeah, and then there were some people who tipped towards Biden, and their logic was they were looking for somebody who was going to have a more even temperament. And, you know, as much as I might disagree with that,
it's hard to have like strong emotions when you're drugged up so that you have all of your cognitive abilities.
Adderall, maybe a little speed. It also helps to have a lapel mic.
So like when you're trying to listen, because you see me listen to audible books.
Yes.
In the car, and there's an intense part, and I'm like.
Also, can we discuss briefly before we get into this main topic, like what the heck was up with Joe Biden's eye contact?
He was looking up in the sky.
No, he had like this sort of beady eye. It's like he was looking at the heavy lighting in the stage. So
right.
He didn't have to look at anybody in particular, because it's like if he looked at Trump, he would like lose his composure.
But the thing is I'm like, well, maybe he can't see the camera, but when he wanted to talk to the American people, he looked at the camera, but then he would be reciting. I think you brought this up when we were watching the debate. It was almost like he was reciting, and he would be like, and the American people need a president that.
Or maybe he was tuning into his little handlers.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe he was listening, and so then he was like deer in the headlights, like me listening to a crime novel.
You do get really engaged in your books on tape,
and
it's true. Like Biden had this kind of zoned out, like I'm doing my recitation, and my hand has to move this many times clockwise, and I'm going to look up and look directly and appeal to the camera, and it's like that's like normal commercial behavior, you know, like if you're an actor or whatever, but. He wasn't talking to the, Wallace if he asked him a question. He wasn't talking to Trump in response to something he said that was incendiary. It's like he was just like, oh, topic. They said this. Do this speech. You know what I mean? And it was so obvious that he was mechanically doing that it was off-putting. Plus, I couldn't understand how someone who is allegedly this passionately engaged, like he got into this, quote unquote, Biden got into this because of the Charlottesville controversy, right? Because of Trump misspeaking and sort of like not properly disavowing white supremacists and that sort of thing, and the whole, good people on both sides debate.
White power.
Well, at one point Biden said on camera, like, that's the reason I'm running this race is because of that. So if, he's that passionate about it, why is he acting mechanical? Why is he not engaging Trump directly? The only time he looked Trump in the eyes when he brought up Hunter. So when he brought up his son and started trashing his son, which he knew he would, and he starts doing Bo, the good son, and he brings him up as like a defense to like pivot away from Hunter. That's the only time he went like this. And it was real obvious because he pivoted like 45 degrees and like engaged Trump head on. So he obviously had no problem with making eye contact. But I think his handlers told him, they're like, throughout this 90 minutes, you just do not look at that guy because he will throw you off your game.
Because Trump is good at that. He was so good at it during the primaries. Oh, man. And I was a Ted Cruz girl. But everyone was tuning in to watch Trump and to see what he do and hear what he was going to say next. That time he made that ugly joke about Rand Paul. Now, I don't think Rand Paul's ugly, but he's like, yes, plenty of content there. I was just like, oh my God, this guy is insane.
Yeah, I mean, he was just using basic TV brawling tactics that he's used for
right. Ever. But he's good at giving, certain types of, I know this is certain types of personalities can make a nickname for a random person and it sticks. My pastor is like that. He calls my brother Wilbur. That is not his name. They just my brother's name and the name Wilbur just happen to start with W's. We don't know why. He called my mom Squeaky for years.
Squeaky?
Yeah. And it just stuck. It just stuck.
What?
I don't know what it is. He just gives people nicknames and it sticks.
Well, did he give you one?
No, I'm not special.
Mm. Well, your name is kind of a nickname anyway.
Z. But Trump has that. He's got that thing about him. He's got this. Maybe you know the word for it, but it's this thing where there's certain types of people when they walk in the room, even if you hate their guts. Oh, do you remember Mean Girls? Regina George. He is literally Regina George.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, he's just the big kid on the playground.
Yeah,
and it doesn't even
you
particularly
hate him,
matter.
but you have to have his attention.
It doesn't even particularly matter how clever the nickname is, or even if it works. Like sometimes it, like Sleepy Joe, kind of makes sense. Like that's a good one because it kind of does fit Joe because he does look like he's about to pass out perpetually. I mean, because he probably is.
Right.
I mean, they were saying they wanted to give him like 2 half-hour breaks, and the Trump campaign was like, no, if he can't handle the debate, get him off the stage. But calling a lid. They heard this thing, we just like calling a press lid, like we're just gonna not film today. We're not gonna do anything today. I need to eat some yogurt and take a nap. Maybe take my little old man walk around the yard. But yeah, I mean, and the thing is too is like Trump has like maybe 4 or 5 nicknames that he kind of cycles through.
Crooked Hillary is not that great of a name. Like he could have used another H word and put it in front of her name. Get
that assonance going on.
Yeah, he could have called her Hitlery, like Hitler.
That's all right. Maybe Trump's better at it. It's okay. But yeah, I mean, it really is true. And I think speaks to a larger trend as far as how people were going to perceive him in the debates, because, like they did this poll with like I believe it was Telemundo viewers. And the interesting thing is that when you start talking to the sort of Hispanic types, they were saying that he won something like 60 plus to 40, Trump to Biden. Which is almost the exact opposite of what you were getting with American viewers. So there's something interesting about the cultural perceptions of leaders. They like the strongman persona. Right. They like that big, bombastic, loud, I'm going to call you to the floor and I'm going to call you to the carpet kind of personality. And so a lot of people have been reporting on this in the mainstream media and in alternative media. And they don't really have a good analysis for it because, obviously the sort of Anglo-Saxon way of approaching things is that you're supposed to remain stoic and calm and have like the civil debate. But
not the hot-blooded Latins.
Yeah, but the hot-blooded Latins are thinking like WWE, man, like crush him. And so there's going to be a lot of numbers, I think, that move behind the scenes that the political analysts either are not going to show us, or that people are going to just kind of keep to themselves until they go to the polling booth.
Well, that's what I was just thinking. Like, how many people? Like, is it innate in human beings to kind of like that archetype? The guy who will brawl in a bar, the guy who will fight for your honor if you're a woman, the guy who will punch anybody in the face if he calls you yella. Like I'm wondering if by like in like our nature, like biologically, like we want that guy to succeed because that's the type of guy we want every guy to be.
I would say all signs point to yes. And I think this is part of the reason that Trump frustrates the left so much is because one of their biggest movements, their biggest sort of foundations of everything that they're trying to accomplish, their little leftist revolution, is the sort of decoupling of masculinity from men, and turning us into this sort of widget-like culture where men and women are exactly the same, and schools are going to start rewarding the females and punishing the males, and kind of have them all drift more towards femininity, and matriarchy is the future. The future is female. We heard this for a long time in the last 4 years. So it makes sense that if you go based on instinct, if you go based on the past, if you go based on like just your gut feelings, there's something kind of awesome about the way a strong man can dominate an obviously lying, manipulative little,
weasel,
guy like Biden. And I think a lot of people see that. Even people who are low information and don't necessarily know even what they're arguing about, they see this guy with this kind of debatably real hair and this fake tan and this big power suit standing there looking at him the whole time, not even addressing the public really, but looking at his opponent. And you see this other guy sort of like looking like a corpse and super pale and clearly not in good health and clearly not in good cognitive status. And he's just kind of looking away and kind of looking down and making nervous little smiley gestures and like calling him a clown and saying, "Shut up, man," and appealing to the moderator to help him out. People get this. They get the body language, they get the interaction, and they go like, that one's not the alpha male. Who do I want to lead my country?
Well, don't you find it interesting that the left, if you're a man on the left and you kind of want to climb the ranks, you find an issue and you find a camera and you cry about that issue and you get really passionate. Like I've been binge watching Savage Moments by Jesse Lee Peterson. Not saying that I agree with everything that he says, because he says extreme things about women, but he does make a good point about how men and like they get in their feelies and they make that virtuous, but that's not necessarily it's not necessarily virtuous, or actually it's not virtuous at all.
We've been trained,
right? So like I can get on camera and cry and people feel like, man, he really cares. He cares about people. He cares about the children at the border separated from their parents. Like, look, he cried. But those are the same people that I don't see. They never do anything. They never meet with the president. They never meet with a legislator and say, we got to figure this out. Like people who really care, like I'm friends with people who really care, and they're not high up in the conservative world by any means. You'll never see a camera in their face, but they like I've got friends right now who are in DC, and they're gonna be what is the word? They're I just got a big blank.
What is their capacity? Like, what job are they doing?
They're just moms, but they're going and they're lobbying, and they're saying, "Hey, lobbying." That's the word. I'm so sorry. They're just moms who care, and they're going to their representatives and saying, "Please don't make this decision," but they're not getting in front of a camera and crying about it. And so you got these people who aren't making as much money. They're just conservatives. They're just moms who just want a good country for their children to live in. And they go and they talk to their representatives, and then you got the folks on CNN who are like,
right.
And that's supposed to be virtuous, and then we're supposed to follow them as a leader. The problem is even if you see someone, like if you see a man and he's supposed to be the leader, and he cries and cries and cries all the time about everything, and you may say, oh, I'm supposed to think that's virtuous. I still think deep down inside you're like, yeah, I don't want to go to the front lines with that guy.
When was the last time you heard the term "man up"? Like spoken?
Probably basketball or something.
Yeah, but how long ago?
I'm not telling them how old I am. I'm kidding. I had 8 years.
I haven't heard the term "man up" spoken unapologetically and unironically since I was a kid.
Right. Well, outside of Jesse Lee Peterson.
Yeah, I mean, except for like rare occasions here and there, or maybe like little pockets of the country
like
where
Stephen
not
Crowder
everybody has, a golf club membership, or, parents who attend a liberal church. I mean, it's really rare to hear what used to be a really common phrase when I was growing up. I mean, like I remember I would fall down and my elbow would be all scratched up and I'd have like a bunch of road rash, and it would legitimately be like traumatizing for a kid. My buddy, the first thing he'd do is he'd literally kick me in the side and be like, "Man up." And you'd be like, you'd be sucking back tears and like wiping your own blood on yourself, trying to like get yourself under control, because it was far more important to you in that moment to appear manly than it was to, exclaim like, "Hey, like I lost half the skin on my arm." That's who we used to be. You even look at newscasters and these commentators back in the day, these Walter Cronkite types and that sort of stuff. Histrionics, displays of emotion, screwed up faces, all this sort of stuff was a big no-no. You were supposed to be sober and in control, and it didn't matter how horrifying the circumstances or how tragic or how much loss of life. You were supposed to impart the news objectively and in a calm, stately manner. Now we've got displays of emotion for both ends of the spectrum, right? We've got bombastic and angry, and then we've got, sort of the crying female, woe is me kind of shriek response, which is supposed to like draw male aggression to get them to do something. And you're seeing this used by both political parties, and you're seeing this used by news and everybody. And so it's one of these things where, I think Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson accurately points out, it's like you're acting like a woman, because they're taking on female traits that we know evolutionarily, we know over time are adapted and modified and useful to women. If you start shrieking in a certain tone, it like sets off my kill instinct. And I'm like charging through the walls to try and find out what's hurting you. Like that's my natural instinct as like a protector. And this works when it comes to politics. It works when it comes to cultural paradigms and like picking winners and losers. So I think that it's gross to see men on TV like Don Lemon, or even women like Rachel Maddow, because it's so cynical, crying over certain issues and then just, ignoring others that are obviously happening at the same time just so they can pick winners and losers.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cynical. It's
Mm-hmm.
manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
And what's pathetic is that people fall for it,
Mm-hmm.
especially when like trust in the media currently, I believe the polling puts it at like 60% of people don't trust the media. So who is this 40% that's making all these decisions that's constantly rampaging around? I mean, it just seems bizarre to me that such a small percentage of the population actually values what the media has to say, and yet they're still influenced by it.
I would say I don't think Trump came off angry.
Mm.
Because his emotions didn't get heightened. He just wasn't gonna give any ground up. He was like, his mindset was, I'm taking ground the entire time. Now, I'm not saying that strategy was like the best. I'm not saying it looked good. I am saying that, like, when you think about people who've gotten angry, think about Cory Booker's Spartacus moment. I mean, I think that was fake anger, but think about that.
He's a very cynical, measured politician. I don't think any of his feelings are real.
Right. But when you take those things into account, or those situations and events, Trump didn't raise his voice. He didn't yell. Like, no veins popped out. His face, well, we can't tell because he's orange, but it looked like maybe, like, his ears didn't get red.
No,
you know what I mean? So I don't think he got angry, which I think is a good thing, because you do it all the time at work, where you will display aggression at the right moment. So it's like you let it out of the hatch a little bit and bring it back because it's not needed anymore.
Yeah, it's like a steam valve. I keep like a really low kind of pressure hum. And then if somebody's pushing me to a certain point where I need to get them under control, or I'm going to have to resort to violence, well, rather than resorting to the violence, I just let that come out a little bit, and hopefully that deters them from pushing it any further.
We, my brother, my cousins, two of my cousins and I used to work at the Y, and there was just some kids that would not listen. And there would be days I would come in and I would be legitimately angry. And there were some days I would come in and I'm not angry, but they had to see, like, me kind of turn into Mama Bear for a second. And then they would walk away and you're like, cool, they listened. Yeah, like, you're not angry, but you're just letting them know that's as far as you're going to go.
And I mean, that's what command and authority is.
Right.
It's being able to, in certain moments, show them that you're the alpha, that you're the silverback, that you're the head of that pride as a lion. And then you immediately kind of go back down to like baseline.
Right.
A lot of people, you can see them, they kind of have to like physically amp themselves up before a fight. They have to start doing all this posturing. They have to like engage you verbally for a good long while. And you even have to say a couple things that'll trigger them to get them a little even more angry, so that they can get to that point to where they have the courage, or they black out, to throw that first punch. The thing I always have to remind the people that I'm dealing with in my profession is that I'm always ready to fight.
Right.
That I don't need to go through this big song and dance with you to inflict violence. I'm ready when I'm half asleep. I'm ready when I'm angry. I'm ready when I'm eating. Like, it's just a nice kind of like little thing that just sits right under the surface like a steam valve. It's just pressure moving through a pipe. And if you inflict something on me and you force me to defend myself, it pops out. And then I go back to that basic baseline. Somebody like Trump, I feel like, has his baseline is just higher. It's that sort of New York bombastic, big guy mentality. He's got a big ego. He's got big problems. He's got lots of money. He's probably always got that steam valve at a certain pressure level, right?
Higher,
and so
for
him, it's like when he goes on debate stage, he probably gets a lot out of it. He probably enjoys that sort of like that tussle, that rough and tumble atmosphere. And we used to reward him for it for lots and lots of years. We used to give him lots of views and put him on every single show, and he was always getting referenced and this, that, or the other. Everybody wanted to be Trump. As soon as he put an R in front of his name and he became Donald Trump, president of the United States, suddenly all that was bad. According to who?
That's what I was just going to ask you. When did that become bad? Because to me, that sounds like a good thing. Like, as a woman, you're thinking about the type of man you want to be with. Do you want to be with the guy who gets weepy when there's an issue? Or do you want to be with the guy that's steady and can get in a moment of stillness?
Yeah.
I've been listening to Dan Crenshaw's Fortitude. He has this thing
called stud.
Run
for president, Dan.
He is great. It's got this chapter talking about being still for a moment. so that you can, and like you kind of practice it, and then you'll be able to do it at a moment's notice. Like, do you want a guy like that, or do you want a guy that's flying off the handle, can't control his emotions, whether that's aggressive emotions or really weak emotions? So when I look at Trump, I'm like, he's got his problems, he's got his flaws. Okay, Jesus, don't kill me in the comment section. But he's in the regard we're talking about, he's kind of ideal in a way, because if you're a woman, you still want to feel protected with your guy, even if you're a black belt and whatever. And you also want to know that people aren't going to be talking to you however they want, because they know that Donald Trump is your man, and you're going to hear from him.
There is something inherently intimidating about the way he conducts himself too. Like, even though he actually has a reputation for being quite kind and very fun behind the scenes, like very down to earth, kind of reasonable guy that'll shake your hand and stuff, he still gives off that vibe of like, if you touched Melania's butt, he would backhand you without hesitating. You know what I mean? And I think people know that.
Or he's got a guy that'll do it for him.
And so that's why all the attacks on him are primarily going to be things where they think they can kind of appeal or poke him to get him to act in such a way that he will display aggression, so that they can point at him and be like, see, he's out of control, right? Whereas with Biden, he's too controlled, he's too measured, he's too calculating. And that's like the kind of behavior that turns women off. If you think about it in terms of like the whole mating dance.
They're acting like us. We're the ones that are calculating. We meet a guy and we're already thinking about our wedding. We're thinking about what our children will look like. We are in it for a reason. The guy's just like, yeah, I think I'll take her out again. I enjoyed her company that one time we went for coffee. We are 15 years ahead of you guys.
Which is horrifying.
All the time.
No wonder you guys are always so angry.
I already know what my children are going to look like. I already know what our house is going to look like. And I know all of it already. I already know the Suburban that we're going to buy.
No.
We're the one, and I'm not saying that women should be this way, by the way. I think there's the sin of man, there's a sin of woman. And women are usually the ones, because we can't overpower a man, so we have to be more calculating. We have to think we have to play chess.
See, now I think this is actually a really good analogy for what's going on in the country right now politically. You've basically got the left using what you just explained as a means of manipulating and controlling and trying to overpower the sort of male ethos of the country. And I don't know if it's going to work, but the two are contending with each other really heavily right now. And we've, it's like they always say, we've had enough of masculinity. Let the females take the reins, let them have a shot at leadership. But it's not as simple as just electing a woman to president. They're not going to settle with that. That's not good enough. It's got to be eradicate everything that is classically male.
Right.
And so you're getting a lot of pushback naturally. And so that support is going to go to the man who appears to be more of the alpha male. And that is by every demonstrable value going to be Trump. Nobody's going to look at Biden and think that's a guy who's going to have my back. They look at a guy like Biden and they think, well, I hope he hires like a good defense person or something.
I did a video that should come out at some point. And the way that I put it is, I'm like, Joe Biden is supposed to be the nice guy. Joe Biden is that uncle that has the fancy job in D.C. that you can call up at a moment's notice and ask him to buy you a PlayStation, and there'll be a package at your door. Like, that's the kind of guy he's portraying.
And apparently, and to be perfectly honest, apparently the general consensus in politics for years is that Joe Biden is actually a very like kind, sweet, kind of empathetic guy, and like he'll even call up his opposition when something bad happens, and he'll like relate to them on a personal level, and he's very empathetic and all that sort of thing. But then he'll say schemy, horrible, skeevy things about them as soon as they're in a political context. So he's one of those types of people who maybe behind the scenes actually does act like a nice human and actually does demonstrate some of these characteristics that the media likes to give him plaudits for. But when it comes to politics, like, he's a knife fighter, and he'll slit your throat without a moment's notice, no hesitation.
Come on, man.
And so, when you look at Trump, I think what people like about Trump who do see him in a positive light is he's not two-faced. He's just Trump. He's the same guy on the toilet tweeting at 4 a.m. as he is in a presidential debate. Literally the same person. And so you know exactly what you're dealing with, and so you're looking at the real human. And no matter how much the media tries to paint him as a monster and all these sorts of things, he's so predictable that I think even the average dum-dum who doesn't know what's going on is going to be like, that guy seems more genuine. I can't tell why. I don't know why, but I trust that guy more. And I think that the polls are going to start reflecting that.